Good evening and welcome once again to the Whitbread Round the World race for the Volvo Trophy. Nearly 4 weeks at sea, over 5,000 miles covered. And this week, with a change in the lead, this first leg has become a real race to Cape Town once again. Well, when we left the fleet, they were through the doldrums and gathering pace as they turned towards a rounding mark off the east coast of Brazil. After passing the island of Fernando, they moved on to Trinidad before turning their boats further east in a relentless push to Cape Town. Well, I can tell you it's been a week of some drama out there on the Atlantic, and we'll have the latest onboard reports. Fenella George finds her own transport to try and get a better view of the fleet off the Brazilian coast. We meet the man who the others have been chasing down as Knut Frostad makes his entry in our captain's log. And Tom Binns finally begins his own, perhaps slightly over-ambitious campaign. First, though, Fenella packed a bag, picked up a Brazilian visa, and set off to find the fleet.
Come to Brazil, they said, collect some tapes, shoot some pictures. And so here we are, Eric the cameraman, Andrew producer, Mike still photographer from All Sports. And it's been a bit of a roundabout route. We've been travelling for a solid 28 hours. And to make matters worse, the Pope's in Brazil, so they've delayed Brazilian summertime for a day, so we've no idea what the local time is. We're about to be collected by the Brazilian Navy because our home for the next few days is going to be a floating one, but there could be a spanner in the works because they've no idea that there's a woman in the party.
The ship is not prepared for single ladies.
Well, I think
experience.
We have no problem if it is no problem for you.
Yes. Okay.
Well, it wasn't a problem for them, but I got some curious looks as we loaded the gear on board. Apparently, they'd never had a woman even step on the boat, let alone spend several nights at sea. A few military formalities later, and we were off. Off on a 200-mile voyage to Fernando de Noronha. It was dusk as we left the comfort of the harbour at Natal, out into the open ocean and a rough night at sea.
This is the ultimate in seasickness, this boat, because it had everything. It was just rolling and bouncing all night. Mosquitoes buzzing all around my head. Not pleasant.
Mike was as pleased as anyone to arrive the next day. The island is a beautiful national park. Tourism is strictly limited and there are no hotels.
We're anchored off the island of Fernando. Could you give me the lat and long of the gate they have to go through? What sort of speeds are they doing? Blimey. Well, at 10 o'clock GMT, which is 2 hours ago our time, Caverna was 93 miles away, so that's kind of 10 hours. 9.5, 10 hours from now. This is 6 o'clock this evening, which is just when it's going to be dark, so it's going to challenge us.
It did as well. I set off with Andrew in the Navy rib. It was pretty windy and pretty bumpy. After a few scary moments, he managed to scramble aboard the race leader to talk to skipper Knut Frostad. I didn't.
You must be pretty happy with the way things are shaping up. It's early days, obviously, even though it's 2 weeks into it.
A lot of miles to go. We're just halfway in this first leg, and a lot of things can happen. So we don't take anything for granted yet, and we wait to be too happy until we're finished.
Oh, I whipped out really badly. Had to admit. To be honest, getting on there. And I think for my first trip on a Whitbread, even when it happens, I'd rather it was in daylight or anything. I got really frightened. And it wasn't just me that was frightened. Night missions were halted after Caverna. The skipper thought it was too risky. I realised that was the end of our chances of getting to Merit Cup and EF Language, which were due 5 hours later.
Tá certo, tô monitorando aqui no 16. Ok, pode ser.
Day 2. Silk Cut and Chessie Racing were next up. A few anxious moments and a dilemma as to how to get to them. Well, this is turning into a much more interesting story, I think. First, captain's asleep. We don't know whether we should wake him up or not. Secondly, we don't have any boats. Thirdly, we missed 2 boats last night because the captain wouldn't let us go and use them. But the Brazilian Navy came good, and we were off for Silk Cut. The British team was in 4th place, and after 2 weeks at sea, they seemed pleased to see us. But they might have been more pleased if we'd arrived with a few home comforts.
Silk sheets.
Silk sheets.
And ice cream.
What about a female?
Up on deck, though, Laurie Smith was much more focused on the race.
I suppose we're disappointed with 4th, but you know, it could be worse with Toshiba, for instance, back 200 miles behind us. It's been a very strange leg so far. The breeze, very, very light breeze and fickle, and you can be 1 mile behind a guy, and then the next sked you're sort of 20 miles behind him. You know, we're all in pretty good spirits. There's no problems with the boat, no breakages, we haven't broken any sails. And we're looking forward to just getting in some decent, solid breeze, you know, and trying to just slowly catch the miles up on these guys ahead. And I wonder how you're going to get off here, Eric. That's the only problem. I think you might be a swimmer, matey.
And he was too. But we didn't let the small matter of a bedraggled cameraman spoil our sightseeing. Stunning scenery and our captain as a guide. But all too quickly, we were back to reality.
Well, we've been foiled again. We were just setting off to try and catch Toshiba, probably the most important boat for us. And unfortunately, as you just seen, the propeller seems to have been damaged somehow. So we're back here on the boat. Toshiba's 5 miles that way. So things aren't looking that good, really, I'd say. 2 boats out of 6 so far. It's not easy.
But by the next day, a spare propeller was found and fitted. Undaunted, we were off again, this time to find out how America's Challenge and Ross Field were getting on.
Overall, we're happy, but we're very, very hungry. Our food, we budgeted for 30 days food. It's going to take us 32 days, and we really cut down on our weight at the start of the leg, and it's really starting to tell now. The boys are all losing weight, and but we're halfway, and we should be in by the 22nd, 23rd, and we're looking forward to it.
For us, time had run out. On our way back, our schedule was interrupted by a 2-day naval exercise. No more Whitbread boats, but a military send-off to finish back on the Brazilian mainland. For the past 5 days, the Brazilian naval ship Grajaú has been our home, and its crew are very hospitable hosts. Some of them have even given up their rooms for us. I've also had the honour of becoming the first woman ever to step on board one of these ships, let alone stay on one for a week. It's been a very interesting experience for us, being part of the Brazilian Navy for one thing, but also it's taught us the kind of operation needed to track down and get on board Whitbread 60s mid-Atlantic. Not as easy as we first thought, perhaps, and it's something we've had to work on daily over the past week. Having said that, though, the Brazilian Navy did in fact get us on board 3 Whitbread 60s, and to see them mid-race off the coast of the island of Fernando was a fantastic sight.
Probably the first and the last time that the Brazilian Navy will be used to chase down Whitbread boats, and Fenella looking as if she's happy to be back on dry land. But still out at sea is the man who's been doing much of the leading since the race began. Dubbed by many as the boy wonder, 30-year-old Norwegian Knut Frostad is starting to live up to that reputation.
Knut Frostad, the youngest skipper in this year's Whitbread race. This is his second Whitbread appearance. In the 93-94 campaign, he sailed with Laurie Smith on interim Justicia. And he should be happy with his current performance. So far, his boat innovation Caverna has been leading for over 2 weeks.
I started sailing when I was about 6, 7 or something. in Optimist and stuff like that, but left that quite early because I find it quite boring. So I didn't pick up really sailing full time or a lot before I was 10, 11-ish on the windsurfing. People tend to think it's a normal yacht race, but it isn't. Because it's 35 days and boat's gonna break and crew's gonna have problems and all those things gonna happen, and really the best guys are the guys who sort of keep ahead of everyone and sort of avoid having problems and sail fast. So I like the sort of difficulties of all the Whitbread. You know there's things gonna happen all the time. Just have to wait for it. It's just gonna happen. Probably Western Australia is just windy, warm, big waves, easy life, not too many people, not too many tourists. Nice place to be, sailing. I think it was very exciting last time when we first brought into Fremantle. Had a world record and all those things, and it was the first time with the Whitbread 60 in the Southern Ocean. And that was exciting. It's definitely a lot more difficult to both start the project and organize it, find the people, and skipper it. But I mean, that could be my advantage as well, that I can maybe handle more than they can, so hopefully. I don't enjoy being the highest profile person in the team now. But it's worked out all right for us, because in Norway I'm a high profile person in the team, and an Australian doesn't care much what's written in the paper in Norway. But I try when we are sort of abroad to sort of downplay my role quite a lot. I'm happy flying our national flag, yeah. But I don't try to prove anything really. I just want to go out there and do a good job, and we'll see.
Knut Frostad on Innovation Caverna, a very calm head on young shoulders. And in the past week, he's had all his calmness and talent tested to the full, as others have tried to reel him in at the head of the fleet.
Week 4, 5,000 miles of constant battling, and now the weather conditions were taxing the fleet. The expected downwind sailing was nowhere in sight. Instead, the boats were sailing hard into the wind. The going was proving tough and uncomfortable. At the front, the leaders had closed to within a few miles, calling for constant lookout and relentless pushing. Over the shoulder of Innovation Caverna was Merritt Cup, eating into their comfortable lead.
Now we're back in the southeast trades, hard on the wind. Not a lot of spinnaker action here, laying down towards the second island of Trinidadi. We'll stay probably hard on the wind right down through there, and really it's a little unfortunate. This is not what the Whitbread race is about, but as you can see the sun's out, it's not too much water on deck. We have Caverna about 18 miles up there, and EF about 15 miles down there, so we're in second place doing just fine.
As the leaders passed the first waymark, the erratic weather conditions saw the top 3 boats close even tighter together as they dodged the calms and sought out the wind. The next strategic question, how to round Trindade. EF opted to take a westerly course with Merritt Cup and Caverna on their inside. It was a good call. While they picked up more breeze, Caverna started to slow. Behind, the fleet was beginning to spread out. Trindade was now in sight. Caverna first to hit the light air parking lot. Anxious moments as they slowed dramatically, the strain clearly visible on Knut Frostad's face. On board Merritt Cup, intense discussion on how best to sail around Caverna and into the lead. And meanwhile, every minute, EF language steaming up.
It pays to work extra hard here. Every inch is gold. And that's exactly what we're doing here on the EF language, grinding down Merritt Cup and Caverna about a half a mile an hour. So we're looking forward to some good results all the way through this leg.
The work paid off. Keeping a straighter, more easterly course, EF caught up Caverna and Merritt Cup and then sped away. Come Trindade, Innovation Caverna had lost the lead they'd held for over 2 weeks. EF language now ahead by a whisker.
As you can see, the island is quite a volcanic island. It's coming straight up out of the water. Its peak is quite high, about 500 meters. We have to pass within a mile of it because there's a waypoint, a gate down here. So we're expecting to go into a hole here. It could be quite tricky. But we got a 1 mile lead on Merritt, and we we hope to hold that to head off to Cape Town for the last 2,600 miles.
After 3 weeks sailing, it's back to a day race. Trimming, tweaking, sail changing. Grant Dalton now in second and in sight of the lead.
We've got EF Language about a mile in front of us, and just behind us is Innovation Corona. There's a real dull patch just before the island, which will bring everybody in concertina them, and now we're getting the breeze out the other side. So it's 2,500 miles to go. About 3.5 miles separate the first 3 boats, and now it's all on.
Dalton buoyant, but Knut Frostad having to get used to third place.
Lost 2 places. I've been in the lead for 2.5 weeks, so that's always disappointing. So we gotta hang in there, and we have 2,500 miles to pass them.
Problems on deck? Maybe. But down below, confusion reigns.
But the biggest problem today on board the boat is the problem of the replicating toothbrushes. We started this leg with 12 toothbrushes. We now have 14 toothbrushes on board. This one here being a particularly nice Aquafresh, I'm not sure who owns it. But what we're wondering about is, do toothbrushes have sex at sea? And if so, how come we haven't heard them?
One thing they'll be glad they can't hear is the choir on board EF Education, over 600 miles behind. A shortage of food hits different people in different ways.
Oh Lord, won't you bring me a Big Mac and fries? My friends all are eating and dining with one. The food we get here is just plain old freeze-dried. So Lord, won't you bring me a Big Mac and fries? Thank you.
So while the women are dreaming of Cape Town food, Innovation Caverna are for the first time in over 2 weeks staring at 2 boats in front of them. Laurie Smith has shaken off his nearest rivals, but still some way from the front. And if you're on the second page, there's lots of sailing to be done, as the gaps between boats continue to widen.
So after 14 days in the lead, Innovation Caverna is at last outmanoeuvred by both EF Language and by Merit Cup. One man still hoping to get out there and mix it with the big boys, though, is our own Tom Binns, who this week, at long last, gets his feet wet.
My PR man Murray has finally got me a boat, if you can call it that, and arranged for Holly here to give me some last-minute pointers.
When it goes all saggy like this, can you see?
Oh yeah, that's bad,
Okay. A happy sail's not a flappy sail.
Right, a happy sail's not a flappy sail.
Yeah.
Bang on, we're moving. There's one of my opponents, Brunel Sanergy. We'll have you! We'll have you! Come on! See you in Cape Town!
You're going to hit Toshiba in a minute.
Is that better? What do you do then?
Go that way then. Go that way, just...
We nearly hit Toshiba, but I think they know what we meant by that. The curry boat cometh. Just got 1 or 2 teething problems.
I'm cheering off so well each of our 10 competitors.
My sponsors, Mr. Singh. Hi there. Thanks for coming.
How are you?
Yeah,
that's
cheers.
no problem, yeah.
Cheers.
Excellent. Takeaway menu, please.
Takeaway menu.
Yes.
Excellent. That'll come in handy.
Wait for me! Wait for me! Help!
I'll see you in Cape Town! I'm not finished yet! Murray! Murray!
Well, we eventually got him back to dry land, but if Tom is to get to Cape Town, he's going to have to book an airline ticket like the rest of us. Now, back with the real action, Brunel Sanergy with problems of their own, having to put into port in Recife in Brazil to repair a broken rudder. Richard Simmons takes up the story.
The Dutch boat's rudder was badly damaged after a collision with a whale. But with the land of Brazil just a few miles away, the decision was made to leave the racetrack and fit a spare.
We went into Recife on Saturday morning very early, and in 4 hours we completely changed the rudder. So that means that we put the boat out of the water with a very old crane in Recife, with a lot of help from the Brazilian people. And then we put out the rudder, we put the new rudder in, and that was all done in 3 hours. And then we had to still do some formalities for the customs, take on some new food, some small electrical stuff which we were going to repair, Satcom-C, and then we were gone again. So that was a very quick Ferrari pit stop for us.
The stop might have taken them just a few hours, but Brunel was forced miles off course. Lying in 9th place, there was nothing they could do as EF Education sailed by. The race was on to catch them.
At the moment, I think we're 9th out of 10 boats, and it's been a pretty tough 3 weeks for us, I think. It was all very frustrating and not very easy for the crew because, well, we've worked very hard for a year and a half, and you don't feel like you want to start the Whitbread at the back of the fleet.
And neither will these guys. A £10 million budget and stuck in 8th. But they still hope to get back in the middle order.
We played the inch-by-inch game with America's Challenge and Toshiba, and now they are just under the horizon. Not under, actually, we can see them. They are on the horizon. Very, very close. And somebody switched the power off. You see it's all blank around here. No wind whatsoever.
Ahead of Swedish match, but out of touch with the leading group, temporarily at least, is Laurie Smith and the British boat. Still struggling with light airs, there was consolation in having dropped off the chasing Chessie. On board, the crew continues to push hard, looking for opportunities to haul in the leaders. At the helm, Olympic sailor Adrian Stead. Up ahead, once again the wind shuts down. Caverna frustrated at being trapped by calms and going nowhere fast. One place ahead of them in second, Merrick Cup. Grinding out the speed, changing sails, hour by hour.
It sounds like a real race now, Grant. Do you see the race now as between just you three down to Cape Town?
I think, you know, if you were just to be honest with yourself, you'd have to say that it's between us three to Cape Town. I think over the next 12 hours, you'll see the boats behind lose more time as the southern boats break out once again into the freshening breeze and get really going. It's certainly over for Dixon and Swedish Match and America's Challenge. Probably the only one that could maybe latch back in on something is Silk Cup.
For Kayard's satisfaction at being back in first. New to this game and showing the old hands the way forward.
Paul Kayard now heading the fleet with EF Language. Take us through the events of the last few days. It's become a real race once again, hasn't it?
We've obviously done real well in the last few days, made a move before the island of Trinidad. We opted to try to stay south every chance we could get, and the south has proven good, and that has paid off now. Now you're seeing that we're 42 miles ahead of these guys, even on the course to Cape Town.
What kind of boost has it given to everyone on board? What are spirits like on board now, Paul?
Well, of course, our spirits are good. I don't think we were, of course, on paper, we weren't rated really high in this race because I don't have a lot of offshore experience, but we do have a really good boat. We knew that, and we worked really hard this summer on sails. So some of, a lot of the hard work we put into this thing, we can see some of the fruits of it.
So at the end of week 4, EF Language ahead once again for the first time since early in the race. Merrick Cup and Caverna up there too, and chasing. With just days to the climax of this first leg, the race is definitely on to Cape Town. So less than 2,000 miles left for the leader, and Paul Kayard continues to pull miles out from both Merrick Cup and Innovation Caverna. Laurie Smith is looking to pick up places. Down below, the gaps continue to widen. These boats can forget about winning, but they'll be working to claim valuable points.
Well, it's been a week of place changing at the front of the fleet. The boats have been out there nearly a month. They've covered 5,000 miles, Yet last weekend, only half a mile separated the top two boats. But Vincent, the big news of last week, Innovation Caverna have lost the lead.
Yes, we left them end of last week. Caverna nicely placed, sailing down the Brazilian coast, with the other two boats, EF Language and Merit, nicely covered, looked quite safe. As they came down towards Trinidad, the second island, they had to turn round. Breeze went very light indeed, and Paul Cayard just trickled through the breeze, got past them, and just crossed ahead of Merit Cup. It was bad luck for Caverna. They hadn't made a bad decision.
Hold on a minute, bad luck. You've been on this game. You were navigator for Laurie Smith. Now, when you're in that situation, you're leading the race, you're the navigator, you're down below, 22 hours a day, and someone goes past. What do? Do you pop up on deck and say, sorry, boys, bit of bad luck there, hit a cloud? I mean, surely luck doesn't really come into the game, does it?
Luck does, but it's quite difficult to persuade the crew sometimes that it was bad luck. I mean, in this case, it genuinely was bad luck. They couldn't have predicted this. There wasn't a way around it. But it is very stressful. I mean, I think sailing as a Whitbread navigator is one of the most stressful jobs you can get. Every 6 hours, the whole world is told exactly where the boats are. Everyone's told how much you gained, how much you lost. There are people like you and I sitting here saying they've made a mistake. It is very stressful. Yeah. The guys are tired now, they're running short of food, they're running short of cigarettes, they've got no stimulants to keep them going.
Laurie Smith's in an interesting position. He's in fourth, but if you told him before the race you're going to be ahead of race favourite Chris Dixon, you're going to be ahead of Ross Field, who won last time in the Whitbread 60, he'd have been pretty happy with that. I'm not sure he'd have been happy about fourth, though.
Well, by this stage, he's probably getting relieved to still be in fourth. In the early days, he would have been quite upset to be there. First leg, when I was with him, we were fourth, and there was not many smiles on the boat. So he'll be unhappy about that. At least he's got himself a bit of clearance there, and he has now definitely got a chance to attack the guys in front.
Laurie Smith will be thinking perhaps about taking a risk now?
I'd like to see him have a go at it, yes. I mean, those guys are there to be taken. The breeze is light. Again, we've got an unusual situation. The high pressure's in the wrong place. High pressure's probably going to cross the fleet. If it goes over the top of you, you park. You're stationary. And at that stage, 180 miles is not much.
They've been out there a month, they've had very little sleep, they've had very little food, they're very tired, they're very uncomfortable, and they're sailing a big Grand Prix.
Yes, and they're back to square one again now. There's two separate races now. As far as those guys are concerned, they've just crossed the start line. Fairly exhausted and very hungry.
When do you think the first boat's going to arrive in Cape Town?
Depends very much on the movement of this high. Fast passage Tuesday, slower Wednesday. If the high goes over the top of them and they lose another day in light airs, even Thursday. But early half of next week.
One thing's for sure, they'll be coming in hungry.
Yes, that's right. The restaurants on the seafront will be doing quite well.
So there's been plenty of movement in the fleet during the past week, and with just about 7 days to go until the leading crews are expected in Cape Town, they'll be looking for every inch of boat speed along the way. We will, of course, be in South Africa to meet them, as with some relief they reach the port named the Tavern of the Seas. Join us again same time next week, 7 o'clock BBC 2, as this first leg of the Whitbread Round the World race draws to a close.
Well, I can tell you that this afternoon there was even more movement at the top of the fleet. EF Language have dropped Merit Cup and Innovation Caverna further behind and are now leading the race by a clean 100 miles. Everyone now knows that they have only a week to close all gaps. For latest Whitbread information, turn to CFAX, page 386.